All right, happy Sunday. Here we are again at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Had a great time yesterday watching the O'Reilly race. We had Carson Campbell win the O'Reilly Parts race, which is the old Xfinity race, which is the developmental race, if you will. And then we had Carson Capoval, who got on the pole. Who actually, this is in a lot of ways his hometown track. Has had a lot of experience here. If you remember, a few months back, he did the burnout standing up and standing outside his car. So they asked him, "Hey, are you going to do that if you win here in Indianapolis?" He's like, no, there's probably some rules that I can't do that. But I'm thinking about doing something. And they've been kissing the bricks here in NASCAR since 1996. So Dale Jarrett started that back in 1996. Of course, they've been kissing the bricks here, well over 100 years with the Indy 500 and so forth. So yeah, so we're good to be here. I'm on the fourth floor of the Media Center Pagoda here next to Tower Terrace. Nice, comfy place, but I'm going to be out chasing some race cars. But before that, we're going to be talking some NFL. It's our NFL weekly drop, and all the teams have broken camp, and we've got some news to talk about all of the camp stories. But joining us now is our camp counselor, Ed Kracz, beat writer for the Philadelphia Eagles and SI.com, our official NFL contributor. How are you, sir? Happy Sunday to you.
Yeah, happy Sunday to you. Sounds like a great day you have lined up there.
Yeah.
Go chase some race cars.
That's right. I enjoy it. It's a second hobby. This place is actually what my daughter always jokes with is this is your happy place. So yes, it is. So we're going to be talking about some camp news and some stuff that's going on. But we've got some unfortunate news that we probably need to talk about, and that's 49ers coach Kyle Shanahan is going to be limited in his camp practice, and he was in a horrific car accident, multiple ribs broken in his wrist, fingers, and he's got over 40 stitches in his face. So obviously he's got a team of associates that's going to step up on that. Ed, what do we know about that? What kind of thoughts do we know about Kyle Shanahan?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's bad news, but the good news is he survived, and so did the driver of the car that was also involved in the accident. So it's a good news, bad news type of story. He'll overcome obviously these injuries. I think it was 3 ribs. He broke his hand. He had a broken nose, and then maybe even more concerning than that was apparently he has a severe concussion.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Which that's always concerning, especially when they term it severe. But I've heard a couple schools of thoughts on that. There's no such thing as a severe concussion; that they're all considered severe. But when they term it severe, that's pretty serious. So you hope he can clear out of that within the month. Who knows? But what's interesting too about it is it happened, I think, back in earlier July, like 2 weeks ago. And
yeah, we're just now hearing about it, right?
We're just now hearing about it, and which is odd in this day and age where stuff leaks and breaks all the time, and you're in a big media market like San Francisco, and here we are 2 weeks later finally learning that he had this accident, and maybe his injuries have already begun to heal. I'm sure they have. We don't know how long he's going to miss in camp. It sounds like he's probably going to try to be there in some form. I don't know how the concussion is coming along, but sometimes you can't be in bright light or outdoors or around noise.
Exactly.
So I don't know how that's all going to work. I guess we'll find out when the 49ers come into camp.
Yeah, John Lynch was talking about, it's so up in the air whether or not that they play the Rams in Australia in the first game. So it's gonna be interesting to see a game in Australia. But John Lynch says don't know for sure if he'll be able to make that game. So we will see. Another sad story coming out this week. Jordan Beebe dies at 38. He was NFL guard for the Patriots, won a Super Bowl with the Patriots, and died by suicide. Don't know all the details, but anytime you hear that, you think about, the concussion issues that have caused those immense amount of depression and have been linked to suicide. You wonder if that's the case. Always a sad story when you hear that. Jordan Beebe dies at 38 years old. He was a father, husband, sad story all the way around.
Yeah, for sure. And we talked about this offline. You sent me the news, and obviously 38 is just tragic. But I'm sure it's the CTE, and I guess having looked at it a little closer, I don't think they can even test him to see if he had it because of the manner in which he took his life. Which you can draw your own conclusions from that. But
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, so yeah, that's just a horrible thing. But I remember talking to Malcolm Jenkins, the great leader of that Eagles Super Bowl championship back in 2017, and we were talking about CTE and the concussions and the harm that these players put themselves in. And he said, "Listen, every player in this locker room understands, that their livelihood or their the future life that they could lead might be impacted by what they're doing to themselves today, but they choose to make the decision to play
Hmm.
because you're providing for your family. A lot of these guys get well paid, and they can set themselves and their families up for hopefully the lifetime, and also because they love to play the game, and but they're well aware, they know what they're signing up for, that this could be a reality at some point, that the CTE will take control of your life. But it's a trade-off that every one of these players understands, and they're willing to make. And we see guys retire at young ages even more now, maybe today, than we saw 10 years ago. You see players retiring. Andrew Luck retired at a young age, right,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
Indianapolis. So
right,
it's
absolutely.
yeah. So these
That's a
players
whole nother can
understand.
of worms, but yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I know. But listen, I mean, I'm sure it was a health consideration, and
yeah, I'm
you
sure.
you you
Yeah.
know you make your money, and if you feel like you can make it somewhere else in a safer occupation, then players have that option and that right to do so. And it's a violent game, and unfortunately, this sometimes is the result of playing this game.
Well, and that's why, they get paid, as we joke and say, that's why they get paid the big bucks too. But yeah, we wish him and his family the best. Let's talk
Yeah.
a little bit about the Eagles going into camp this week. I know that you are deep in it with the Eagles, but one of the big things that I know that people have been talking about with the Eagles this week is Jalen Carter and his contract, and how it could loom big time over the Eagles during training camp. But what are you hearing about his contract and his scenario there, Jalen Carter?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Eagles have him under control for this season, and then they picked up his team option for the 2027 season. So, they do have him under contract for the next 2 years. The 2027 season, the value of that contract, because it's the average of players that play his position, is about $27 million, which if he lives up to what everyone thinks he can be, and he can stay healthy and can stay, out of trouble, then that's a bargain. But is he going to want to play for it? Is he going to show up? Is he going to be fully vested? My take on it is, yeah, I think Jalen Carter will be there day one. I think he'll, give it 100% at every practice. He's got a good friend on the team, Jordan Davis, who they played together at the University of Georgia, and they've been teammates now since Jalen Carter entered the league. And he's like a big brother to Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis is. So Jordan Davis is a good guy. He's developed into a real leader inside that locker room. The Eagles gave him a contract extension that will keep him in Philly through 2029. Had a really breakout season last year, but a big part of that commitment to him, I think, was the relationship that he has with Jalen Carter, being his so-called big brother.
Hmm.
And I think, Jalen Carter will be there. He'll listen to what Jordan Davis has to say, and I'm sure Davis will counsel him that, hey, you come in here and you put your best foot forward every single day while you're here. You're going to get your money, whether it's here or whether it's somewhere else. But I think it will be in Philly. They have a lot of big contracts coming up that they have to deal with.
Sort out, yeah.
So, they're going to have to make decisions, but I think they want Jalen Carter to be kind of that cornerstone of the defense on that line with Jordan Davis. They invest a lot of money on the offensive and defensive lines. So, yeah, he's in line for a payday. It's just not sure when it's going to happen. But until it does, I think he'll be there day one. Now, I could be completely wrong. They report on Tuesday night. The players' first practice is Wednesday. But I don't think I will be. I think Jalen Carter will be there, and these things will work themselves out.
Let's talk about the other Jalen Hurts. He, of course, entering in another championship caliber type season with the Eagles. Early looks into Jalen Hurts. What are your thoughts about him?
Yeah, learning another new offense. I think he's had 11 offensive coordinators in the last 12 years, which is really remarkable. Now he tries to spin that into a positive and says, hey, I'm learning a lot about offense in the NFL and a lot of different versions of how to play offense. But at some point, you'd like to have continuity and have your same OC, with you for a couple of years. Now, Sean Mannion is the new AC. He's, this hot shot, up and coming coach who a lot of people expect will be a head coach if the Eagles have the kind of season that, everyone in Philly always seems to think it's Super Bowl or bust. In Philly, it's just not that easy. But if the Eagles have that kind of season, I suspect Sean Mannion, he'll be the next one to go. He'll be a one-and-done OC here in Philly, and he'll probably get a head coaching job next year.
I was just going to say the proverbial stepping stone to the head coach job is just to be an offensive coordinator for the Eagles.
Yeah, and Jalen's under some pressure here too. I mean, the Eagles are kind of changing their philosophy on offense. They're going to run more under center, which is something that a lot of quarterbacks struggle with when they get in the league. Now, Hurts obviously has been in this league for 6 years now, but he hasn't played much under center. So they're going to be doing more play action from under center. They're going to be running a different blocking scheme up front. They have a new offensive line coach, former NFL player Chris Cooper. So, Hurts' contract, he seems maybe he's outplayed it. There's talk about maybe giving him an extension. But it looks like the Eagles might wait and see what kind of year Jalen Hurts has before they, engage him in further contract talks. So it's a big year for Jalen Hurts. Now, he's never been one to back away from a challenge. He's as driven and as hardworking as they come, and is in there early. He studies film. He does everything he can to make himself a great player. So if I was a gambling man, my money would be on Jalen Hurts. He's going to figure this offense out, and the Eagles are going to have a nice season.
I have no doubt. Well, one of the things, that as I was reading through your guys' camp, there's you've got a safety that may or may not have his starting job in Marcus Epps, and you've got Devontae Wiggs, a wide receiver, may or may not have his starting job, and Jakeland Hunt also may or may not have his starting job. Those are the big positions that might be filled by somebody else. As you look at those names and you look at those positions, or you think their jobs are safe, or they got to go out there and earn it?
Well, I mean, I'll take them one at a time. Jalen Hunt, his job is safe. He's going to start. I mean, this guy is, they took him in the 3rd round out of a small school, Houston Baptist down in Texas. He started his career as a safety at Cornell, kind of outgrew that position, but he's a smart guy. He led the Eagles. He became the first player ever in Eagles history to lead the team in sacks and interceptions in the same season. So, the Eagles are really high on Jalen Hunt, and he's a guy that could be in line for a big payday too, one of many on this team, because Howie Roseman's done a pretty good job of drafting in previous seasons. So he's safe. I mean, he's a guy that, Jonathan Greenard, their big acquisition from the Vikings, the edge rusher from Minnesota, has talked about Hunt being kind of a freak, the way he's able to bend, and he's learning more pass rush moves. He had 6.5 last year, like I said, to lead the team. He also had 3 interceptions because they drop him into coverage off of the edge, and one of those interceptions was returned for a touchdown. So, he's a former safety. He knows how to play in the pass game. He's learning more and more how to rush, and I think he could be a candidate for maybe a double-digit sack season. The safety spot is a weakness. Marcus Epps is a veteran who left the Eagles in free agency, signed with the Raiders, did okay, and then they cut him in the 2nd year. He went to New England, didn't really make an impact, and now he returned last year. Started toward the end of the season because their rookie safety, Drew Makuba from Texas, a 2nd-round pick, broke his ankle and missed the final maybe 6 or 7 games of the year. Now they're counting on him to come back and lend some stability back there, but we don't know. I mean, he had an up-and-down rookie season. So, you have him. You have Marcus Epps, a veteran. They're talking about moving Cooper DeJean, who I think is the best player on this team. to play more safety in certain packages. He's an excellent slot cornerback. He's a great tackler. He plays downhill. I think he'd be fine at safety, but they're talking about looking at him at that spot. They're also transitioning Michael Carter, a guy they got in the trade from the Jets, from cornerback to safety. So that's really kind of, to me, something that's going to be watched very closely once camp starts, is what's going to happen at that safety spot. And the third one you mentioned, I can't remember who it was, the third player.
Moved on. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Devontae Wicks.
Datavian Wicks. He came over from the Packers. That guy. He was with the Packers. He when Sean Mannion was there. So, he's got a familiarity with Sean Mannion's system. The Eagles believed in him enough to give him another year on his contract. So he signed for this season and next at, I think, $12 million a year, which, if he turns out to be pretty good, that's a bargain, and maybe they tear it up and give him more. But the receiver room is kind of another position to watch, because they lost A.J. Brown, traded him to the Patriots. Devontae Smith is the number one, and I think he's just fine in that spot. But then you have, guys like Mekhi Lemon, who they drafted in the first round out of USC this past year. He seems to be more of a slot type receiver, good yards after catch receiver. Something the Eagles struggled with last year was the yards after catch. And then you have Datavian Wicks. You have Hollywood Brown, who they signed as a free agent. Elijah Moore, who they signed as a free agent. They still have a couple holdovers, and Johnny Wilson and Darius Cooper. So, there's guys in there, but which ones are going to step up behind Devontae Smith? Certainly Wicks could be that guy, but it's going to be a wide open competition to see who it's going to be.
All right, let's go around the league here. Let's make a stop here in Indianapolis, where I'm at. And we have so much work to do in camp. And I think, a lot of people may underestimate camp as just being a process in the process. But the camp for the Indianapolis Colts, if ever there's been a camp this year where they have to really go in and prove themselves, they're at a crossroads. And, new ownership has basically said, hey, we're going to let you carry this dog out a little bit longer. You got 1 year, basically. That's what they said. Carly Ursay-Gordon is made it very clear that. And so she also is at a proof. Is she going to okay, well, I said what I said and I meant what I said. Okay, it didn't happen. We're going to make some changes, or it did happen, and we're going to keep the ship afloat. But this training camp for the Indianapolis Colts, there's a lot that we could break down in all the problems with the Colts. The Colts are counting on numerous of their key contributors to return in 2026, and that starts and stops with the quarterback situation, as we know very well. Daniel Jones, ironically, is coming back from Achilles heel surgery and injury, and the quarterback situation has been the Colts' Achilles heel. So Jones has shown great strides through rehab. I've been reading and understanding, and he talked to local media, said he's ready to go and he's fully on track to start this Colts season opener against the Baltimore Ravens. We'll see. And then, of course, DeForest Buckner also is returning from a pretty scary neck injury that really made him think about maybe we were talking earlier about retirement. He's remained one of the league's top interior defenders. And then wide receiver Alec Pierce clean up his ankle surgery, which he got that contract. So there was a lot of things that needs to be done. And then of course we drafted Riley Leonard, and we got that part in our quarterback situation. But we got the rookies C.J. Allen and A.J. Hawkey. All of those things, and all of those are in the mix. I know I said a lot to say a little, but the Colts have to have a good camp.
Yeah, you touched on Daniel Jones. I mean, obviously the quarterback position is the most important one on the field because you touch the ball on every play. So it'll be interesting to see. That Achilles that he tore was, I think, in December. So
yeah, it's 14.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty quick turnaround for an Achilles tear. You hope that. Obviously, there's the physical side of it, the rehab part of it, but the mental side, you hope that he's comfortable Obviously running the plays and dropping back to pass and being mobile, running, all that. And that'll be kind of what camp is for too, to kind of get his mental game back. And that's obviously important, and I think on the other side of the ball, obviously Sauce Gardner is a big question too, coming back from, I think he missed the final 3 or 4 games last year with some strain in his ankle or lower calf, I think it was, and they avoided the Achilles with him by shutting him down. But can he return to what they traded for? They traded a lot to bring Sauce Gardner on this team. That's why the Colts didn't have a first round pick this year, I think, because they gave it up for Sauce. I'm not sure they have one next year either, because they gave it up for Sauce.
Yeah, that was a whole big thing. Yes.
Yeah, you gave up a lot to get Sauce Gardner, and so you're really going to have to watch him too. To me, he's just as important as Daniel Jones, because of, he was one of the best cornerbacks in the league before his injury, if not the best. There's obviously a lot of competition out there at that spot. Christian Gonzalez in New England, who Robert Kraft just offered a lot of money to try to re-sign. They love him. You have Darryl Stingley down in Houston with the Texans. I think his name's Darryl. I know his dad was Darryl.
I think you're right.
Or Derek Stingley. But anyway, there's Stingley down in Houston.
His brother named Darryl.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Darryl. That's my brother Darryl. This is my other brother Darryl.
Yeah, the old Bob Newhart show. Yeah. One of the best endings to a sitcom of all time, when he woke up, it was all a dream with Suzanne Plachette next to him from the Bob Newhart show.
Yes, that was hilarious.
Yeah. But so I mean, Sauce is important to this season for the Colts, just as Daniel Jones is.
Absolutely. Well, let's move on. Keep the topic of Indiana somewhat. Fernando Mendoza signs his big money contract, $57.2 million rookie contract with a five-year option. Unlike the Indianapolis Colts, Tennessee Titans, Cam Ward, the Chicago Bears, Caleb Williams, etc., I could go on and go on and go on. Mendoza isn't guaranteed to begin the Raiders season 2016 as a starter. In fact, he'll probably be carrying the clipboard most of the season behind Kirk Cousins. Now, that said, we know how the Raiders are. We know how the Raiders do what the Raiders do. It changes daily. So if you don't like the way the Raiders are doing, just stick around the very next day, depending on what has been, how they get crucified by their fan base is how they're going to react the very next week. So you hope that Mendoza has some time to develop. But the minute that Kirk Cousins goes out there and screws the pooch, their fan base is going to be saying, all right, put him in. We're paying $50-some million. And guess what? They are going to put him in. So let's hope that doesn't happen for the development sake of Mendoza. But what do you thought about that pretty good contract coming out of college? Right? I didn't make that much money my first year out of college. It took me a while.
Yeah,
I'm still working on it, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, it's a very elite group of people that can do that. And Mendoza's got the traits, the number 1 pick overall. But that's how it was done in the olden days, right? The olden days. Back in the day, they used to draft these quarterbacks early in the draft and then make them sit and watch. I can Eagles back in 1999. I know we're going back 3 lifetimes ago here, but Andy Reid, first-year head coach, they draft Donovan McNabb in the top 5, and he sits and waits and watches. They have a little package of plays they bring in, let him run the football a little bit, get him on the field. But he watched, waited, and learned, and became a really good quarterback in the NFL. So it's not a bad thing if Mendoza sits for the year behind Cousins and learns, and maybe have a package of plays for him again, bringing him in just to kind of get him acclimated to the speed of the game on game day. That wouldn't be a bad thing. And, the Raiders have the new coach coming over from the Seahawks, Clint Kubiak. So I think they're going to preach patience. I know it's a fickle fan base. Most of NFL teams' fan bases are, but
true.
I think they're going to preach patience.
Guilty as charged.
Yeah, right. Everybody here in Philly, it's the same way. But, I think with Clint Kubiak, hey, new coach, first-year head coach ever, Super Bowl winner. He knows what he's doing. We're going to get this thing turned around. Mendoza's learning as he carries that clipboard. And, better days are ahead. We just have to go through some growing pains. So I think that's what you're going to see with the Raiders this year. They play in a very tough division, obviously, in that NFC or AFC West. So it won't be easy, but you just have to see some benchmarks along the way that show that, hey, yeah, this team is on the rise here. Mendoza comes in a little bit, shows some good things, but it's Kirk Cousins' show, and we're going to run with it.
So we've got just a couple minutes left because we're on a tight schedule today. So we're just going to rapid fire here real quickly. Arizona Cardinals, new coach Mike LaFleur. You've got the quarterback competition there, Carson Beck, obviously, and then Gardner Minshew's over there. And then last season I think they had Kyler Murray. But neither of the old guys are likely to hang in there for the long term. So what are your thoughts about the Cardinals? Looks like it's going to be Carson Beck's show.
Yeah, I guess, or Jacoby Brissett. I think he was holding out for. Yeah, you're familiar
he's
with
the
him.
best. He's the best QB2 around. Yeah, us QB2.
Yeah, Cleveland. I mean, the guy's been around. Yeah. There was a time that Eagles fans wanted to sign him as a backup, but I think it could be Brissett's job. I mean, I know he wasn't around in the spring, but he's there now with camp, and he's looking for a new contract, but he's got to win the job first. So we'll see where it goes. Could be Carson Beck again, a rookie. Do you want to throw him out there to the Wolves? And talk about a fan base that's hungry for success. It's the Cardinals. They haven't had much. It's a big year, too, for their receiver, Marvin Harrison Jr., who there's talk that he might not be the number one guy, and he was the 4th overall pick just a couple of years ago, but patience is running thin for Marvin Harrison. So there's a lot of question marks there in the desert.
Now let's talk about the Baltimore Ravens. That's who the Colts start their season off. Can Jesse Minter restore the Ravens as a defensive giant, if you will? Scoring was really a problem for the Ravens when they had Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, and a very productive offensive carrying most of the freight during recent season to keep Baltimore in contention in the AFC North. Minter made most of his tools with the Chargers and intends to use an array of a battle plan, if you will, to keep quarterbacks guessing. How quickly can he make all of these pieces fit together over in Baltimore?
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure, in Baltimore. You talk about teams like the Raiders with needing patience, and maybe even the Cardinals too, although I think patience is running out there. But, the Ravens have a really good roster, and they made a really bold move, moving away from John Harbaugh, who landed with the Giants in New York. But yeah, there's a lot of pressure for the Ravens to get to the Super Bowl. Lamar Jackson has kind of tailed off a little bit. You saw it. The NFL.com is doing its top 100 players list as voted on by players and coaches, and Lamar Jackson is down near the bottom of that poll. So, he's got to have the kind of season that we're used to seeing for him, that MVP type season. And then once he gets in the playoffs, he's going to have to do better than he's done. I think he's 2-6 in the playoffs, or 3-6, but he's got 10 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. I mean, he just, when the lights are bright, Lamar Jackson hasn't proven to be the guy that they had hoped. So he's going to have the kind of season to get where the Ravens and their fan base want him to go, which is to a Super Bowl.
Well, when we talk football, it's like making a sandwich. You got your top piece of bread and your bottom piece of bread. And we always like to sandwich everything in between the Eagles and the Cowboys. So why don't we just finish with the Cowboys with this last piece of bread? Is Caleb Downs capable of leading a U-turn for the defense? Downs has panned out to be a top 3 prospect during the 2026 draft. Dallas has said they're going to do whatever it takes to win a championship this year. I don't see that happening, but we do know they're coming into camp and they are ready for a full-blown revival. And Jerry Jones is ready to put his money where his mouth is, I guess. So let's see what happens with the Dallas Cowboys as they break camp. What are your thoughts about your foes to the west there, sir?
Yeah, I mean, listen, we know their offense is really good, and it should be good again with Dak and CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. And you wonder about their offensive line, but, that's really the only question mark there. They put up a lot of points last year. It's their defense. Caleb Downs, I think, has been a great addition. They've made some other moves on that side of the ball. I think the biggest one is hiring Christian Parker away from the Eagles to be their defensive coordinator. Christian Parker was the secondary, the DB coach here in Philadelphia. Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, he developed into all-pro players last year. His players loved him. He knows a lot about the game, and I think he's going to make a big difference on that defensive side of the ball more than any player. I think he's going to have it coordinated. I think he's going to have answers for when teams adjust in game, and I think they're going to be pretty good. I think the Cowboys, they could be a top 4 team in this league.
Well, we don't have time to get to all 32 teams, but we will be checking in through camp, and we'll try to cover teams that we didn't cover before till we get through them all during camp season. I've got some race cars to chase, sir, but I appreciate you joining us today. Where can people find your work and masterpieces, sir?
Yeah, things are going to heat up real quick here. At Kratze, Krazze, I put out the links, and that's where you can find me. So go chase your race cars, buddy.
All right, buddy. We appreciate it. We'll talk with you soon.
All right, see ya.
See ya.